Super Videos back at you for another video. This is going to be my character spotlight for the Lucille victims, Abraham Ford and Glenn Rhee. Let's begin with looking at Abraham Ford. So even though me as a fan personally, I wanted to see Abraham in the show have more of a presence in season 7, and I wanted to see him be more involved in the war and for him to be a part of the war that's going to be coming up since he is a soldier, it does kind of make sense for him to die because his story arc is complete. And like I said, I wanted to see more of him in the war, but since we're not going to be getting to see that, it kind of does make sense for him to die because his character development is complete and his story arc is complete. Because if we think about it, when we first were introduced to Abraham, at least in flashbacks, he was a survivor like Rick, and he was surviving with his family. And we got to see the things that he went through and what he did and the challenges he faced, what he had to do to survive. And we also saw him at the lowest point in his life when he was trying to commit suicide. And we did see how far down he had gone at that point. And then we also saw what saved him, because Eugene obviously came along and saved him because Eugene gave him a mission, gave Abraham a mission, and kind of got Abraham to a point where he thought he's going to be useful. He's going to take care of Eugene, who he thought had the cure. And basically that mission saved him from death. And obviously afterwards, he used that mission as the primary focus of his survival. And then what we saw after with Abraham is he tried to help others survive, but again, he had the mission at mind and he wanted to help Eugene and get him to Washington. And then once Eugene came clean and told him that he wasn't a scientist and that he had lied to him, he was a broken man again. And we could see in his eyes that he was thinking that he failed again and that everything he's done for Eugene was for nothing. But once he thought about it and once he kind of thought deep into what this world is like now, he realized that there is something worth surviving for. And that basically got him to get on board with Rick and help Rick and the others find a community and survive. And then afterwards, when everything seemed to be going well for him, he had an epiphany and he realized that life is too short and that he needs to find something that is going to make him happy. And that's what caused him to leave Rosita and tell Sasha about his true feelings and share with her the idea that he wants to have a family, he wants to be with her, he wants kids and everything like that. And if we kind of look at what he's been through, he's experienced all the phases that a character would go through in a story like this. And it only seems appropriate that his arc be complete by this death because there's really nothing else for him in this life. But again, it would have been better and it would fit this story better if he died in a war. Similar to how he would die before the apocalypse because, like I said, he was a soldier. But putting that aside and assuming that, that's not relevant, then his character development and his story arc is actually complete. So it kind of makes sense for him to die. Now let's look at Glenn and what he's been through. If we look back at Glenn and how he was introduced, when we first saw Glenn, he was very smart, but he wasn't confident. He didn't have the confidence he had before he died. And he was just a young man who was trying to survive in the apocalypse, but he still had a grip on his life before the apocalypse, and he hadn't completely let go of that yet. And then through surviving with Rick Grimes, we've seen him grow as a character, and we've seen him become a stronger survivor, become a better man, and through meeting Maggie and finding love, we did see him transform into an entirely different man. One that would do anything for the people he loves and would go through any lengths to make sure that Maggie and the people he cares about are safe. And then obviously recently when him and Maggie had started a family and when the baby was coming into their lives, we did see how it changed his character more and more and how he became stronger as a survivor, as a man, as a human being, because he now had to think about Maggie and his baby, and it basically gave him something worth living for, more than Maggie did give him. And in many ways, what he found at that point was similar to what Abraham found with Sasha, and it basically gave life a new meaning to him, even during the apocalypse. So if we look at Glenn and what he's been through, we can see that again, his arc is complete, and it only makes sense for him to die during this moment, during the Lucille lineup scene. Now, it was predictable because that's exactly what happened in the comic book, but I feel like they kind of dealt with that by adding Abraham to the mix as well and killing him in the same moment as well. But there are just some things from the comics that fit the story so well that you shouldn't change them, and changing them would hurt the story more than it would help the story. So because of that, I think even though it was very predictable, Glenn's death fits the most, and it moves the story forward and it makes the most sense. We've seen some of those moments before. If we look back at season 6, the Anderson family massacre was exactly like it was in the comic book, and they didn't change it because it fit the story and it was just perfect the way it was. Also, looking back at season 4, we can see Lizzie and Mika's death was the exact same as it was in the comics. Obviously, in the comics, the gender was swapped because Lizzie and Mika weren't in the comic book. They had male counterparts in the comic book, but still, their death was the exact same way, and they didn't change it because it fit the story and it was perfect the way it was. And it's the same way with Glenn's death. Even though that's exactly what happens in the comic book, it fits the story the most, and it makes sense for that to be the case, for Glenn to die. And because of that, it was the best case scenario for Glenn to die. Even though I didn't want Glenn to die, I love his character, I love Steven Yeun as Glenn, but it's just one of those things that is so emotional and it fits so well that you just have to do it. Also, going with Abraham, I love Michael Cutlitz as Abraham. I think what Michael Cutlitz brought to the Abraham role was so great that it enhanced his character in the show. Because in the show, what we saw from Abraham was something much better and much more fleshed out than what we saw in the comics from Abraham. And in many ways, what Michael Cutlitz did to Abraham's character made us fall in love with Abraham all over again. But similar to Glenn, it makes sense for Abraham to die. And I'm gonna say this again, and I can't stress it out enough. I wanted to see Abraham in the war, but I understand it, and it makes sense why he would die at this moment, because his character development and his story arc is complete. But that's it for this video. Thank you for watching. Share your thoughts in the comment section below about what you think about these two characters. That's it for this video. I'll be back for another video.